Product managers use a lot of jargon and frameworks to talk about the work that they do, but that can get in the way of actually communicating the why behind the decisions you're making to the rest of the company. So rather than use that jargon, you should get rid of that and just talk about the universal language of your company, which tends to be the customer. Not all frameworks and buzzwords are bad. You just need to understand the problem they're trying to solve. As a product manager, you have to talk to many people who are not one of you. And so as soon as you start using these buzzwords, people get confused.
Buzzwords. Minimum viable product. I kind of liked it. I think we needed a meaning. A popular perception of what an MVP is a product experience that has just the right amount of fidelity and features for a customer to get to a certain outcome. So if it's a mail app, it's the ability to send and receive an email. It can be used as an excuse, I guess, because it does get into that territory where you're like, yeah, I'm done with that. I've moved on. That's an MVP that I've released. I'm not thinking about that anymore. Moving on to the next thing. That leads to a lot of dead ends. That leads to a lot of stagnation of features.
MVP as a concept is a great concept if you understand it, and your definition of the word viable is correct. But you can see PMs use it as a defense mechanism, where if they ship something and no one thinks it's polished or quite ready, it's like, it's just an MVP. Just hold off, all right? It's just an MVP. Doesn't need to be perfect. But if you're not proud of it, then no, it's not an MVP. It's not actually viable.
Product managers are the CEOs of the product. That was a bothersome one to me because it implied that you made all the decisions, which you don't. So very rarely do we have all the ideas. And if we do, we're probably going to miss something really important. Product's job is to focus massively on what does the customer need? How do you solve it? And how do you bring a team along in that vision? And the CEO of the product will never be able to focus on that because they'll have way bigger concerns, way bigger problems.
Please don't say designers make things look pretty. Don't ever say that to a designer because a designer would cry. Just forget about that word. We don't just make things look pretty. That's a part of the experience. I die literally every time I hear that.
This is an engineering and product one, which is people use the concept of story points. So you have a backlog of things. This is mostly born out of tools like Jira, where it's like, how many points is this? Which is meant to be an increment of work. So for each team has a certain number of points that they have per week. All of a sudden, all your discussions become around points that mean nothing. Like it's a made up concept. It's not that the concept is poor. It's trying to make sure you don't take on too much, that you stay focused. The team has to actually prioritize. Like it's a forcing function to get the actual problem you're trying to solve. But then all of a sudden, you're just having all these meetings about points. And then all of a sudden, people are being KPI'd on, you said this many points and how many points did you do? But then people change their definition of a point. And it's not, and so all of a sudden, there becomes this whole system and process around a process. So the process becomes the product rather than the actual product. I've worked on a team where that was happening and people were using terms like story points and issues and backlog. And we just got rid of all those tools. You don't need bug trackers, right? If a bug's important, you fix it. If it's not important, you don't fix it. Plain and simple. If someone brings it up again, it's probably important. You should go fix it. You don't need to track 500 bugs.
I think product management is not something which is well understood by the world in general. A lot of people thinking doing product is just ordering user stories in a backlog. That's pretty annoying. Product management is very complex. You need to be empathic to your customer. You need to think about those revenue at the same time as customer experience and what will make a good product. You need to think about how the world will evolve in advance. And you have to take those bets. It's also about adapting. You took a decision, yeah, it might be wrong, but from this decision, it's how I can learn from it.
So like Agile, this actually a good concept is which you should listen and learn and constantly iterate on what you're doing and then uses it as a safeguard to not actually doing your job. Agile is just an excuse for a lot of people to just not have an actual plan or a roadmap. Well, what are you going to do 6 months from now? Well, I don't know. We have to be agile. Who knows what could happen? We can't commit to something that far out. So Agile's not an excuse to not have a plan or a roadmap. It's a way of thinking to prevent yourself from locking yourself in a team in a direction that it shouldn't actually head in. The value we have, a think customer, I don't see this very often, but you can use that in a negative way. We talked a lot in one of the interviews around not building for just one customer. So as a PM, you need to make a tough decision often and say, you know what, that's not something that 80% of our customers are going to like, so we can't do it. We can't commit to that. And then the person could come back and be like, well, you're not thinking customer. Why don't you care about this customer? And it's like, of course we care about them, but there's a bigger picture. And so it's taking, a concept or a term and using it in a way that's actually the opposite of what it's intended.
Platform services' job is to kind of build things that all the other product teams need. And then it's reusable, it's fast, it's effective, we build it once, and then we move on to the next thing.